Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video we're going to add in our home page. And our home page is going to take two images from each category that we have and display those. Those would be the top two images, maybe they're the most popular or whatever. In our case, they're just going to be the first two images in our array. Again, it's just a proof of concept at this stage. And then at the bottom, we're going to take 8 random images from all the available categories. Now, this is actually quite easy to do because we're working with arrays, but when we come to work with Doctrine a little later on, it's actually a little bit harder as there is no sort by rand, at least not easily available to us inside Doctrine. But we'll address that as we go through. So as it is, we're in the slash gallery, but if we go to the root, we don't actually have anything there. So we're going to start off by creating ourselves a home controller. And again, if this is sort of new to you, if you're not that comfortable yet with Symfony, I would advise just typing this stuff out just to get yourself used to it. So we're in the namespace of app bundle controller. Our class is going to be home controller, which extends controller from the framework bundle. And inside that, we're going to have a public function, which I'm just going to call index action. And I'm going to make sure to add in the routing annotation straight away, as that's typically something I would forget, particularly when recording videos. So say @root, and remember that's brought in the additional use statement. This is just going to be the slash, in other words, that home path. I'm going to name this root as home also. Okay, so one thing that I've done is I've brought in a bunch of images, did this a couple of videos back, but if you've not got this yet, or you've not got your own selection of images, then feel free to grab them from the repo. It's probably easiest just to clone the repo and pull them out, or however you wish to get access to them, but it saves you from having to download a bunch of images, unless you particularly wish to. But what I'd like to do now is create 3 arrays, and I've named these because of this. So starting with abstract there, then landscape, summer, and then landscape winter for those different blocks. And what I'd like to do is have 3 arrays here that are called abstract, summer, and winter. Now I could do this the tedious way by refactoring, renaming, grabbing all that information and so on, but do have a command line shortcut to make this just a touch easier. So as you can see, I've already copied those images in to the web images directory. So if I change into web images, do an LSLA, maybe LS would just be an easier way to see this. We do have all these images, but they've got these weird amounts of space between them to get them into columns. So instead, I'm going to do LS minus B for bear, doesn't really do that much, 1 for 1 file per line, and M to add in a comma, and then capital Q to quote the image name, which just makes it easier when pasting it into our arrays. Okay, so let's drop back in here and paste all that lot in. Selected all, Command R, and what we'll do is we'll say find us the comma and then a space, and I want to replace that with a comma followed by a new line, making sure to tick the regex, replace that, and then it's just a case of tidying up. Okay, now you could extract these out into their own private functions or whatever, but really we're pushing the boundaries of our hard-coded implementation at this point. And in the next video, we're going to get started using the database. So I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to do it all inside one controller action. But of course, feel free to do it any way that you like. Now we're going to start off by displaying the random images, because that's probably the easier of the 2 problems that we're going to have. And the reasoning for that is because otherwise we're going to end up with a bit of template duplication, and I want to address that separately. So rather than manually creating a 4th array, which contains all of those, I'm instead just going to create a new variable called images, which is going to contain the output of array merge, taking in abstract, summer, and winter. Okay, so that should just be a flattened array containing the contents of all 3. And then because I want to randomize these images, I'm going to call shuffle against images. And the really nasty thing about doing that is that that has now completely mucked up this images variable. I hate mutation. It's like the #1 source of bugs for me. And so this is, as I say, a pretty nasty way of doing it, because it's potentially, maybe not in this instance, I mean, it's quite a trivial situation, I suppose. But if you do this sort of thing in a more real world setting, then yeah, this is where bugs can sort of slip in whenever you start changing stuff up. It would be a lot nicer if we could assign the output of this to a new variable and leave this one alone. But hey ho, that's a built-in function and it is what it is. Anyway, we're going to create a new variable ourselves called randomized images, which is going to take the first 8 of those shuffled images. So we need to pass in the images array, and then the offset, well, we're starting at 0 because it's a 0 indexed array, and we want to take the first 8. Finally, even though we don't have it yet, what we're going to do is render out the home template index.html, passing in our array of randomized images. So let's go ahead and create that template. Nothing that you haven't seen before by now. Again, letting PHP store and create the directory and the file. And then I'll very quickly just add this in. We're going to start off again by extends base HTML twig. And you can use the Symfony plugin to make this a little bit quicker still. So we'll have a block body, so it'll like automatically complete template names and so on. So mblock, just don't seem to have it enabled for this project at the moment. Div of class row. Again, bootstrap stuff. I have a simple for loop that says for image in randomized images, remembering that's the key that we've just passed in. Close off that for loop, and then we'll just have probably 2 rows of 4 seems to be a good shout here. So we'll say column, if we're on a small phone or a phone sized screen, we'll have 2 per row. Otherwise, on a larger screen, we want 4 per row. So again, that's 12 divided by 3 because of the bootstrap 12 column grid. Then inside each one, we'll have the div with a class of thumbnail, and then we'll have the image. And we're not going to worry about actually linking to that image to the view at the moment because we don't have that slug set up properly. So say it's from the web root, and again it's going to be the full image, which is a bit lame, but we've not addressed that as of yet. And then we'll have some alt text. So we should now be able to browse to the slash. Have I missed my return statement? I have. Try again. So we're on the small screen size there, so I'm just going to close that off, and you can see now we've got our 4 in a row, and we each time get these randomized images. So above these, what I want is these category views. So we'll start off with abstract, as I think that's the first in the list. I want to show the top 2 images from abstract, which in this case, background pink and black and white wave, purely alphabetical. But as I mentioned, as our site grows, we'll do something a little bit more interesting with that. So we'll just have a key called abstract, and I'm just going to slice off again, this time from the abstract array. I'm going to take from 0, just 2, and that should be good enough. That gets us the top 2 images from that array. And then back inside our index, we'll have a new row. We'll give it a header 2 tag, and we'll say top wallpapers for abstract. And then we'll have another row where we will loop through. And so we'll say for image in this case, abstract. Close off that. And this time, if we're on a small screen, we'll have 1 per row. So column small 12. And if we're on a bigger screen, we'll have 2 per row. So again, 12 divided by 6, that's how we get to 2. And a bootstrap 12 column grid, inside which we'll have a div class of thumbnail. And inside that we'll have our image source. And again, it's basically this. Let's steal that. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got there now. And that looks all right. I'm quite happy with that. Maybe we'd want a little header 2 tag in here as well to say random images, just to add some separation in there, maybe a HR as well or something, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I'm not overly concerned about the way it looks. But now I do want the same thing going on for our remaining 2 categories. So we've got summer and we've got winter. And to begin with, it sort of makes sense to take a copy of that and paste it in twice. You know, so you've got summer and you've got winter. And instead here you've got winter and you've got summer. I mean, we've got 3 categories and that works. The thing is, if we had 12 categories, do we really want to repeat this whole thing 12 times? It seems a little bit lame. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the piece that repeats. So we've got this for loop which repeats, and we need to pass in something for it to repeat over. And then we've also got this which seems to repeat as well. So I'll just take a copy of that or cut it out. And I'll call this a new template, which we're going to call best in category. You can call it, of course, anything that you like. I'll paste that in. And rather than just have image in abstract, we're just going to have image in images. It doesn't matter at this point because whatever we want to pass in as images, we will just do so from our template that calls this template. We don't need to worry about any of this, but we will need to come back and change this template up when we start working with objects. So back inside our index now, what we can do is include this template, this best in category template. So we'll say best in category HTML twig, and then we'll say with open paren, and then inside single quotes, I'm going to say images, because images is the key that we're looping over in our for loop. So we'll say images in this case going to be abstract, and we'll see where we get with that. So saying unable to find a template, and this is actually a little bit of a weird one. It goes back to the earlier days of Symfony, And what we need to do is prefix this with 2 colons. And that should just work. Or it would, but I've forgotten home. So home, best in category. So let's give that a shot. And we can see it's working. And the reason that's working is these 2 colons represent app resources and the views directory. We're saying we're simply in a subdirectory of app resources views. Is because in older versions of Symfony, we typically didn't use this concept of a single app bundle. We would have multiple bundles for our project, and you might have a resources views under each of the bundles. And so this path would contain the bundle name and so on. But modern best practice is just to use this app bundle and then have every one of your views under app resources views. So that's where that comes from. It's a little bit of a sort of a throwback. Anyway, we're doing the same for each of these. So I just need to pass in summer here and winter here, and that reduces the duplication quite significantly, but everything should still work, which looks good. Okay, so at this point we're basically done with our proof of concept. In the next video we're going to start moving a lot of this over to the database, which will mean that we start working with objects, but we have a decent starting point to work from.